Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Grid Shift podcast. I'm your host, Alex Durante. This is where we talk with founders and operators who are actually building real businesses in evolving industries. I'm very excited about our guest today. His name is Stan Pipkin. He is the founder of Lighthouse Solar out of Austin, Texas. Stan has been in the solar and the renewable energy space since 2007. Something that I find unique is that's early enough where it wasn't a trend. He actually was part of building the industry and has been in this, for almost 20 years now. So he's not just building a company, but Stan has really helped build and evolve with the industry over the last 20 years or so. So Stan, good to have you on. How are you doing today?
Good, Alex. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Before we get rolling, as always, we are sponsored by Profit Access AI. For those of you listening, this podcast, it's all about connecting with founders and leaders. But what we do at Profit Access is we help manufacturing and renewable energy companies. We help them scale their revenue, implement systems, and make business more efficient, more profitable, and easier to scale. So that is who sponsors the podcast. So Stan, as we jump in, I want to start here. I found it interesting in our last conversation how you came out of an architecture and systems background, not traditional energy. And so what did you see in 2007 that made you commit to a completely different industry than what you were in with solar?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And truth be told, before I got into this industry, I was deeply afraid of electricity. It was something I didn't know anything about. I didn't. It was just mysterious, and so that was part of what drew me to it. In fact, like you said, I was practicing in architecture, and there were times during that projects where as the architect, you would basically call an electrical engineer to say, "Hey, can you solve this problem? I have this building. I need the electrical portion of the project addressed." And that would be shipped off to somebody, and they'd come back with a design. And I felt it was really a black box, and so I had no insight as to what creative solutions were they really providing? And it was something I just didn't know a lot about. And so that stuck in my mind to say, you know, and I was living in Houston, Texas at the time, the energy capital of the world. We use a lot of electricity. We take it for granted. And I thought, well, my core interest was how do we manage our footprint? We're looking at climate change and just the challenge of development. How do we do this more responsibly, more sustainably? And I felt powerless when it comes to energy. And so that just stuck in my head to say, I need to get educated. I need to understand more about how to use use this part of the industry as a creative tool towards finding solutions for where people live and work. And so that was a aha moment for myself to say the architectural field is not solving this. They're not engaging engineers in a way that I thought was powerful. And so that opened, I would say, my mind to opportunities where I could grow into. That happened to coincide with an opportunity to look at a solar opportunity, basically a company out of Boulder, Colorado that was designing architectural products. It was very early on, architectural projects that were, solar products, basically. There was not many people doing that. It was a kind of a natural fit for me, and so I jumped in, and it turned into something that I hadn't really expected, which was really to deep dive into the bigger question of, is distributed solar, so solar spread around the grid, is it a viable path towards, creative, innovative solutions to shift the way we, handle and relate to energy very specifically? And so that was a big question, I would say, that satisfied intellectual curiosity, and it was I didn't know where it would lead. I mean, honestly, there's many things that have come up since then. The industry's evolved, and I've just been kind of ground floor to say, I need to have my hands on this. I need to understand it. I need to understand the market, the technology. I now know more about electricity. Still afraid of it for what it can do, but I know the risk, much more clearly now. So that was kind of the initial aha epiphany moment that got me set on this path.
Okay, so in 2007, when this really started and you had that aha moment, would you say you were building the business from day one, or was it a lot more trying to understand the industry? I know you just mentioned a company out in Colorado. Like, what
Yeah.
did that look like on the early on stages of building the business and or understanding the industry, which was totally new to you?
Yeah, no, good question. I mean, the reality is the relationship with the company in Colorado, I was an employee when I started, but it like within months, what needed to happen is we needed to build a business in Austin. So we had kind of we were like a branch office, but it just became clear that the market was still disorganized. It was very early. And so uh, Lighthouse Solar in Austin, we began kind of under the umbrella of a company out of Colorado, but we were operating independently, from the beginning. So we had to think, how do we start this as a business that can operate, autonomously from, inputs from another state? They just didn't have the resources to support us to grow. So it was really on us, our team in Austin, to grow a business that could stand on its own. At the same time, we're having to grow the market. So we got involved. I got personally involved in policy making, just with the utility and some local advocacy groups from the beginning. So it was working in the regulatory space at a policy level, at a marketing level, how to public education. These things there just weren't tools available. So we had to, it was, all hands on deck. And so to build the business was to build the market and set up some
Okay.
collaborative efforts with other companies. So it was really, it was the task was on us. If we were going to make this happen, we need to step in and start pushing on all those levers.
So get the plane off the ground and figure out how to fly it as you go, right?
I don't like to
The
use that
classic
analogy,
Vietnam
but yes,
situation.
it's partially true. Yeah. And
Okay.
it's,
And
I'd say,
yeah, go ahead.
I'd just say it's not quite as chaotic. The industry at the time was sort of less complex, less, now it's multidimensional. And so the level of complexity has just kind of continued to grow. So, the problems we were solving then were just simpler in a way, but nonetheless, we had to kind of work with a lot of outside inputs and stakeholders kind of at every level.
And I remember us talking with architecture, and we were talking a little bit. It was about like systems and being,
Mhm.
process driven. How do you think that transfer of knowledge from architecture and systems thinking, how do you think that influenced your approach to getting into the solar space and what it is that you're doing now?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I mean, I would say I'm still answering that today, but we built our company really to focus on solving problems, and so an architectural practice. I mean, you're building a business around providing solutions, for specific design, kind of within specific design parameters. And we took that approach for the solar business rather than thinking like we could cookie cutter our way towards scale. We really said, how do we develop the right sort of expertise that can deliver efficient but tailored solutions for, every scenario is a little bit different. And it's not to say we can't aim for standardization, but we need to aim for efficiency without sacrificing, what is important to the individual, the customer. And think of it as like someone's house or someone's business or someone's community. It may on a spreadsheet, it may look the same, but when you visit the site and talk to the people, they imagine this is a very unique place. So from the beginning, we had to develop ways to deliver like tailored customer experiences, but do it at a reasonable price that reflects, genuine operational efficiencies. So that's always been, I would say, a tension. And that's the same tension in most architectural firms. I mean, to run a business efficiently, you've got to have those practices need to be, efficient and consistent, but it's inherently a new challenge every time. So we've taken that approach and I would say really embraced it. And it's meant that our business has grown, in a very diverse way. So our core skills, core competencies are strong and they're translatable across multiple, environments or multiple, I would say, people would say sectors or customer classes. For us, the project, we're very careful about what those real differences are and what we can handle. It just means we've been very diverse and we've been able to pivot, when the market has changed and the regulations have changed. We've been able to adapt pretty quickly because we're not radically changing our business model. We're just shifting our focus. And so that's proven to be, knock on wood, it's given us a lot of durability in the market, till now.
Right. Right. So you mentioned about earlier just a little bit about getting involved with policy, understanding the technology. Then we just touched on operations. Uh, you know, for your business and really a lot of people in this industry, what do you think people underestimate about building in a new market? Like obviously you've been around a lot longer than some of the other players, but where do you feel like people underestimate how to build in a new market?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's I've learned, and I didn't come from a business background. I mean, like I said, architecture is a business, but it's it's a kind of different way of thinking. So I've learned this, and I think what I find, a lot of peers, a lot of companies that I see that maybe grow very fast and then have to pull back, or they run into challenges where they've underestimated something. And generally, what I've learned is that if you think of the end state, and for us, it's a long-term relationship with a customer. We're building systems that last a long time. They're not designed to be obsolete or to replace them. And so we come with the promise that what they're buying is something that will last a long time. So we have to think from that end state, that state of mind, in order to design kind of our business model. And so, a business model that's predicated on radical growth, revenue growth, customer acquisition, grow really fast, will I'll almost guarantee that you'll miss the details that will impact your business, in year two. So these could be service related. This could be escalation procedures. This could be just operational. This could be how do you handle new technology when it comes? How do you handle technology companies that have poor customer support? And so the customer experience is not just in the transaction. It really is across that 25-year, which is a ridiculous time frame. It's longer than an average marriage, we'll say. And so we have to imagine, is our business model contemplating that long-term experience? What we found is that, and we took that approach, we've taken that approach, we still do. What we found is that the revenue comes later, but it comes in a much easier fashion. So when we think of a long-term relationship that we honor with service, with consultation, with transparency, those are kind of our hallmark principles. The repeat customers, referrals, the follow-on sales, we don't have to ask for it. They just come to us. And so when we think about the customer acquisition cost over time, ours will just continue to go down. And so that's, as a principle, if we set ourselves up right, we're not spending, today's dollar just to get the next project. We invest in that relationship and then it yields fruit. And it's easier in a way for future project, future revenue growth to come. It's just we have to be more patient, and I'd say that's the thing that I see most underestimated is the value of patience. If you can wait a little bit, and if you design your business to be patient in that way, the returns are actually, more enjoyable, like i.e. it's, you're not fighting to get the next project, and it's in a way it's just more productive. So and that, we went through some growing pains to try to figure out how exactly to balance that with the pressures of just, growth. That, I mean, it's inherently, people want to see growth. They get excited by it. They think that's the end all. And for us, it's a kind of longer term growth. Do you know the lily pad sort of thought experiment, which is
No, I don't, but let's do it. I'm sure the audience will love it. Let's hear it.
and I'm sure it's common, but it's if you have a pond and you've got lily pads that are doubling in, quantity every day, you'd say you know how many and let's say it will be full in day 48, and so where are you on day 47? And so not it's not that big a giveaway, but you're only at halfway. So, all the way to the end state, like there's a very slow buildup. So it's a geometric progression. It just means that if you consistently grow, at some point, the growth is explosive, from day 47 to day 48. You just have to wait to that time. And I'm not saying like we're
The law of gestation, right?
yeah, exactly. And so it's really, if we're setting the conditions right now, that growth will come. And it comes kind of automatically. And I think that's a very rarefied model, but that's the approach we're taking. We believe that the systems approach, virality or just the geometric progression, is at work. And so we have to kind of have faith that that's like people, our customers.
It's like the bamboo tree, right? You don't see anything for a very, very long time, and then all of a sudden, yeah. So that analogy of the lily pad reminds me. Okay, yeah, that clicked. We're talking about growth, right? And a lot of companies are like growth at all costs. We're a growth company, growth. But then you look at the other side of sustainability, right? So I think you touched on that a little bit, but I want to dig in more to how do you think of that growth versus sustainability when it comes to your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it has to be measured in a very, for us, you've got to be really vigilant. I mean, solar, these are large capital investments. I mean, someone's paying for the equipment, whether it's the homeowner or let's say a third party owner. So these are not trivial transactions. And so there's a lot of money. It's expensive to, keep the right qualified people on staff or keep them engaged. So there's relatively high dollar transactions that are kind of rinse and repeat. I mean, you have to do a number of these and keep everybody sharp and engaged. So just cash flow requirements are high. And so if there's not disciplines to monitor that, to say, are we operating efficiently and profitably? Not everything goes perfectly. Win some, you lose some, but if you're not really paying attention to how you're operating, you get upside down really quickly. And so I think the sustainability will come out of the discipline of just paying close attention to the business. And if the business is challenging, which I've found it challenging, just with all the moving parts, then you're really saying, is your team able to focus on the right things in a consistent way without burning out? And so the sustainability
systems are important.
The systems are important, and then the support for staff and the businesses, I mean, for the people in the business is also really important, because things change that are outside of the control or maybe contemplation of those systems. We definitely have seen some businesses take a rigorous systems approach where there's only one way to do it, and that's it's our way or the highway. Those businesses have been very susceptible to big disruptions in the industry. I mean, things that are the tax credit going away last year, big disruption. And so if you're not able to pivot quick enough, it could just be lights out. I mean, it's really, these are not trivial changes in the industry. So I think sustainability is, really comes down to kind of a daily, it's an operational rigor, insight, and kind of attention to details to maintain that. I'm always thinking like, what's next?
What's around the next corner, right?
Around the next corner, and then what's 5 years out. I mean, we're strategizing to be positioned for that. But for our business model where we're delivering solutions, for end users, so we're B2C, we really have to be paying attention to the details, because those details for that individual customer may influence our business model. I mean, if they have to be satisfied. And so that's that. You can't phone that in. And we just find that, the effort we need to make is keep everybody focused, at the right time scale, on the right details, and then do that consistently. So
Right.
that's taken a lot of effort, I would say.
Well, and the next part I want to talk about a little bit is I mean, we both know this. There's a lot of noise in the energy space right now. You've been doing this much longer than I have. Obviously, I have the joy of talking to people that are in your position and own businesses in the renewable energy sector and manufacturing sector. But with all the noise, right? I want to ask you specifically, what do you think actually matters right now, right? Because there's so much going on. Like what matters?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, and this is maybe I've developed software products, that support our industry. So a very different deliverable. I mean, it's a very different technology. And then we build things, done some product design. So kind of, I would say, have had some insight and some experience on different levels of services or products. Most of what we do in Lighthouse is we build systems that need to work. I really think, I mean, I was thinking about this just the other day, like that things really need to function and they need to deliver the value that we speak to. And so, and this could be that we're very careful about, what we claim something can do. And then it has to really work. So imagine if you had a plumbing system, a water system in your house that only worked sometimes. That or cell phones that had 70% reliability. It's a non-starter. I mean, right now our society, we just count on certain things working. We take it for granted.
100%.
And so I think we're in an industry where we're delivering energy systems. That's in the category of, I take for granted that it will work the way you say it works. Fast fashion, we probably give a lot of allowance. Like, yeah, the shirt's kind of ripped here. It's not very good quality. Throw it away. That's not a future for us. And so I really think the thing that matters is our industry needs to focus on solutions that work really well. When you think about like higher complexity solutions, say grid interconnected batteries that are an interactive part of the way the grid works. Those batteries are now highly, I would say, sophisticated elements on a wide ranging distributed grid, and the promise is that they will keep doing that for years and years. So the companies that support that functionality, they didn't just sell a battery, they sold a service that will sustain a high level of functionality and precision over years across all kinds of different circumstances. And so that's an expertise that I think we're exporting this to companies like mine that are getting into an industry that has a wide ranging social and civic benefit that I think people underestimate. So things that work really well over time across different circumstances is at a premium.
Yeah, especially when we're living in a world of highlight reels and shiny objects, right? Yeah, I get it. Well, One of my favorite parts of the podcast is when we talk about failures and lessons, right? And I know a lot of people avoid that, but that's something that I like to go right into because everyone else does avoid that. Like I just said, we live in a highlight reel world, and that's not really what business is. And so
Right.
I want to ask you, you know, you try, I mean, I remember you mentioning, I believe you said you tried like a national franchise model.
Mm.
You had tried all these different things. So what did you really learn from some of those failures? And if you could go back and do something differently, would there be anything that you do differently?
Okay. Well, you said we only had about 30 minutes, so this could be, there's a lot of failures. Yeah, I think the franchise model that was early on. This was kind of at that incubation stage where a company out of Colorado, we were working under that brand, and I think there's a handful of I think there were two branch offices and then a corporate office in Colorado, and we decided to start a franchise organization kind of among ourselves, and this was very early. This was in 2010, and we set it all up and kind of helped grow it nationally. And I think it was just premature. It was well intentioned, but it was a fairly standard franchise structure applied to an industry that was radically, um, kind of disparate markets, different. There was no standardization at that time, and things were changing. They were evolving and changing very rapidly. So the franchise model was kind of static, and it was built on, traditional franchise relationships and structures, and it just was not pliable enough, robust enough to handle, the solar beast that was growing at the time. So that was, and we had an inkling that that would be a real challenge, and we stuck with it for a while. And then eventually, a lot of the franchisees just couldn't make it in those markets. So we grew, and we bought the brand from that company and kind of have grown, outside of that. But I think really paying attention to the differences that matter in a given, both industry and in a market. For us, it's the larger industry, but we were really a, Texas and Central Texas based market, and just a radically different set of conditions. So that was one thing. We were able to kind of recover and pull out of it, but I think the failure was, not paying attention to those differences early enough, and then trying to really design a solution that was appropriate. Yeah, I had a couple, looked at some software solutions, trying to understand how software could support, different practices in the energy space. I think, call it a failure. I certainly learned. I think the software as a bolt-on, or as a value-added service for a solar company. The challenge we found is that solar companies, not a lot of standardization in the companies. So we look at company structure and how those practices and how people are, how operators really believe their business is operating well. It's what we found is there was a high degree of variability of, what level of maybe self-awareness or maturity there was in a company, so they'd really understand the problem that software could solve. And so, designing a software solution for a problem that your customers don't fully understand yet
Yeah.
is we were a little premature. And so, but definitely learned, in a couple different settings, learned, you know, how does an industry understand itself through its own, sort of set of failures. So a lot of the companies we work with, they ran into real trouble, because they weren't being honest with themselves about, what they're doing well or not well, or, do they even understand how they're doing things? Yeah, I think the general complexity of a solar company, it's not unlike other industries, but there's enough particular things, that I like to think that, we're a high tech company, we're a high tech industry delivering a retail experience, and under the microscope kind of the age of Amazon. So people's expectations about what we can do, and we're a construction company, and so those things don't naturally resolve themselves. And so I think that's really been, an ongoing challenge. And I'd say, haven't failed at it, but it's something that, we have to guard against those different tendencies all the time.
Well, and I think you're taking an approach that everyone should take, which is look within, look at what's broke. A lot of people, they don't know what to fix because they don't even want to look at what's broken, right? They just want to say, oh, it works, or oh, that's fine, or and having that introspective approach to say, like, okay, we know we're good at this, but what are we not good at, and how do we fix that? And I agree. I mean, I I tell everyone, like, systemize your life, not just your business, systemize your life, because it makes a difference. It becomes repeatable. The stress level goes down. And yeah, no, I love the way you answered that. So let's fast forward to more of the vision for Lighthouse Solar, for what you guys are doing. What are you building towards now? Where do you see you guys in, 3 to 5 years? What's the vision?
Yeah. Well, we've gained, I would say, a tremendous amount of competence and expertise in different technologies. What I see for us in the future is becoming much more active and engaged participants in the management of these services. So right now we build systems for end users. We either work from a design build perspective, or customers come to us with things they want to build, and then we do that. We engineer it, build it, service it. So I think the next step and I would say for our industry is, for us to take a more active role in the development of these, and then in the ownership of these assets. So we're looking at the big bet for me is whether centralized power or decentralized power kind of rules the day. It's going to be some mix, obviously, but there are definitely, market structures that favor decentralized solutions and others that favor centralized solutions. I'm hanging my hat on, the trend that decentralized solutions will build a more resilient, dispatchable, cleaner, and faster grid. And so our role in doing that will move from just building them to actually participating, at the market level, at the market design level, and then owning assets. So we, design, build, and own assets, and then we participate in the actual, structure and functioning of the grid. So that's it looks more like microgrids, looks more like, multidimensional energy systems that are more strategically located in the grid and kind of across Texas. So we're still very interested in, developing in Texas, and it's where I'm from. Texas is a complex place. It's a big place. There's plenty of activity here, and it's evolving. And I think, and it's also growing. So the energy problem in Texas has, I think we're just scratching the surface now. So yeah, that's what one part of where I look to take Lighthouse. The other part, honestly, is to really sharpen up our service. So I go back to this question of, like, how do you honor a 25-year agreement? It's like, well, you have to honor it. There's no shortcut. And so we built out a strong service department, and looking to grow that across the industry, really to, in some cases, to pick up where there may have been broken promises from other companies, and try to pick up those pieces and make sure, all the stranded systems, the orphan systems, can be recovered. So that's a parallel effort, but it's in service of, kind of maintaining our relevance.
Right. Well, I'm going to close this out with what I call the magic wand question, right? And I ask this at the end of every podcast, and then I want to give everyone your information and where they can connect with you and everything. But here's the question. If you had a magic wand right now, what's the one thing in business that's slowing you down or holding you back from where you want to go?
Yeah, wow, that's okay. This could be maybe a big magic, a big wand. I think we're in Austin. I mean, it's Austin's sort of Silicon Hills. I mean, it's a city that it's becoming a city. It's high tech. It's culturally young city for sure. I think, the challenges I see that we are participating in and trying to have an impact on, there's some very practical, mundane aspects to it, and then there's some incredibly aspirational parts that, full of creativity. We apply all of our skills, and I think we have struggled, honestly, with finding a workforce that can balance those two things, like to find the wonder in the mundane. And the work we do is actually hard work, and there's a lot of it. I mean, and it's not going to be done tomorrow. So finding, I would say, an inspired workforce that sees the value in consistent, and sometimes kind of yeoman's work, but it's incredibly exciting about what we're building. So I think the magic wand would be to sort of shift our cultural sensitivity towards, it's work is not the thing you do between vacations. Work gives purpose. It's like it can be incredibly gratifying, exciting, innovative, and sometimes looking for those innovations. It's not all IPOs. I mean, we find excitement in. We believe in Kaizen, like innovation is everywhere all the time and comes from all areas of our business, but there's a cultural element missing, I feel like, where people don't recognize that, and they don't take pride in it, they don't take joy in it, and it may not immediately give them purpose. So I think the magic wand would be to kind of dispel maybe sort of our hero myth that everything has to be a home run, and I would maybe leave it with the sabermetrics, like a hit by pitch or a walk it's still a run.
Right.
And I think some of that is in our industry. It's sort of inherent because it looks like we do a lot of the same things all the time, but we're building towards something that's, I mean, this is maybe the biggest project in the history of our human species. I mean, it's really building an electric grid that serves all of our purposes is a massive global project. And so,
no, you're 100% right in the fact that, well, a few different things, but one, find purpose in your work. But number two, what you're saying, I've been talking to a lot of people about this. AI is not going to lay pipe. AI is not going to lay electricity. AI is not going to put up solar panels. AI is not going to go out and build the infrastructure that we need. Now, it's going to do some incredible things. It does incredible things. That's why I'm so heavily involved with it in my business and helping other people. But there's a point very soon in time where I believe that those jobs are going to be making more than doctors, lawyers, all of those things. My generation was told, go to school for this, get the six-figure debt, get the degree. And now I'm seeing from talking with people like you and other business owners in this space that there's a huge gap and there's a huge demand for people to go out and do this type of work. So for the younger audience that I have as well, like you can make a very good living with pride and dignity and enjoy and being fired up to get out of bed every day to go do something like what you just described, right? And I don't think that technology, software, AI, I don't think that's going to replace any of that. I think it's just making those jobs that much more important. So no, Stan, I think this conversation was fantastic. What I want to do is I want to make sure that everybody connects with Stan. I'll be making sure that we put everything in the description below the podcast. Also, website is lighthousesolartx.com. Make sure you guys check it out. Again, we'll put all this at the bottom of the episode. But Stan, what's the best way to find you, and anything that you want to close out about you or your business?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Alex. And I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, just Stan Pipkin, and then Lighthouse Solar TX. That's right. Certainly, either way, I would give my phone number. That's probably not relevant, but yeah, no.
Connect with you first, then they could get your phone number.
Yeah, I think yeah, no, I'm very much open to, even open-ended collaborations in that way. But yeah, I think underscore what you said. That we're at an inflection point, and I think the businesses that it needs to be a good place to work. So there needs to be the goal for us is have our employees thrive and grow, and that is the infectious kind of spirit that brings customers to us. And so it's not a small thing to try to get small groups of people together to work on big projects. But there's a lot of us out there. I mean, that's the other part of it, is that we don't know one another that well, and there's a lot of activity in corners of our country and across the world that are kind of working in parallel. It's I think part of what you're doing is trying to get these voices out there, so they're not sort of voices in the closet, but there's a kind of echo chamber, and I think it's a lot larger than we suspect. That's my
Yes.
my hope, and I think it's actually real. So I just leave to say, it's a big problem. We've gained a lot of momentum. There's a tremendous amount of expertise. We're having impact, but we need more. We need more people to be interested, to bring their kind of full selves. Can't phone this in, but there's plenty of opportunity for innovation. I mean, that's what we also realize. Like, the story's not over yet, so I'm excited. It's just the next chapter.
I love it. And that's what I like about this is I get to talk to people who are actually working with purpose, right? And that's something you mentioned. So for everybody out there, make sure you connect with Stan, check out his website. I'll make sure I have all the details in the description section below. But Stan, thank you very much for coming on, and we'll see you next time on the Grid Shift podcast. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.